When I met Nisargadatta, I already had spent many years in practicing the meditation, mainly Vipassana and Zen. When I was there, Nisargadatta was standing in front of me, said, what do you do? What practice do you do? What kind of approach? And I tried to synthesize it, saying, I look at things and let them go, let them pass. And he asked, when all things have been let go, what remains?
Welcome to the Sounds of Sand podcast. This is Michael Riley. Today I'm in conversation with religious scholar and teacher Mauro Bergonzi. And Mauro has presented at several Science and Nonduality conferences over the years about non-duality and his time studying with Nisargadatta Maharaj. And apologies for the sound quality of this recording. We had some technical limitations in our recording, so hopefully you can listen past the audio glitches to the content of what we speak about. And we go deep, touching into some of the core concepts of non-duality in Advaita Vedanta, and subjects like awareness and being, consciousness, and the non-dual nature of the Absolute. All today on the Sounds of Sand podcast presented by Science and Nonduality.
Welcome to Science and Nonduality. What is non-duality?
The universal forces.
It's the collective consciousness.
Being aware.
Trauma is not the external event that happens. Trauma is the impact of that event, which is the disconnection from ourselves.
That matter is energy, energy is matter. That's what EMC squared is about.
There's a language without nouns. There is a language without subjugation. There's a language without objectifying.
But if it's recorded, then there is a collapse. But if it's not, then it's the infinite potentiality.
All right, I'm here with Mauro Bergonzi on the Sounds of Sand podcast. Mauro, thank you for being with us and reconnecting with the Sand community once again.
It's a pleasure for me. I enjoy it.
Yeah, so if members of the Sand community will remember you from appearances at Sand Italy, and we have some videos and articles on our website, which we'll link in the podcast. But perhaps for those that aren't familiar with your work and your teachings, would you mind giving us a bit of your background and how you came to non-dual teachings and your journey as a non-dual teacher over the years?
First of all, I'd like to be precise, and I don't feel that I am a teacher. Mm-hmm. I don't feel that I have a message or a teaching in order to convince people to become different from what they already are. And I don't feel any drive to save the world or people. So my communication is just when you make music or dance or the song of the birds, something natural that is done just for the joy of it, really. Mm-hmm. Is when you are singing under the shower. Why do you sing? There is no aim, no purpose. It's just an expression of it. And I am also aware that when there is a communication about non-duality, it's just an expression of, let's say, the absolute or the whole, like any other expressions. So there is nothing special. It's just, this is why I prefer to describe the meetings where I am invited, because I don't organize anything. I have no society, no association. I don't like this. So if someone asks me to speak about non-duality or to have a dialogue about that, I enjoy it. So it's done out of this joy. Otherwise, I stay in my house, and I feel well, even if I don't communicate. So I call my meetings that using in a different way the Indian word satsang. Satsang usually is meant that there is a guru, a teacher, and then there are the disciples that just they have to open up to the truth that coming from this higher person. I don't use satsang in this meaning. Sat in Sanskrit means being, and sang means community or sharing. So in Italian, if I translate the Italian words I use, is a sharing of being. And
what is that Italian phrase for sharing of being? Just so we can hear it.
Condivisione dell'essere.
Okay.
And of course, it's totally useless because we always share being. All of us are here. So all of us are share a being. So it's not something new that can happen when there is a meeting about non-duality. What could happen in these meetings is just that this resonance of the sharing of being can become for someone and sometimes more apparent. But it can do it in any situation. It can happen, this resonance of being, when you see the smile of a child, when you have a very nasty public official, I don't know the English,
like
for example, the post office. So maybe you meet a very nasty person,
right,
very unpolite person, and also there all of a sudden it can happen. One doesn't know why or how this resonance of being. Also, if you have a tooth pain, or if you just speak with your friends and drink a glass of wine, so there is nothing special in these meetings, but it can happen for someone, and only sometimes, that this resonance becomes apparent, and so presence shines by itself. No, I don't feel that people must change a little bit or more just in order to reach being, because being is already here, and every one of us, with all our handicaps, physically or of mind, just as we are, we can be sometimes even overwhelmed by this resonance of being. This doesn't mean that one doesn't have to work in order to improve oneself. If you have many psychological conflicts, maybe if you undergo a psychotherapy, you will be better and you will solve your conflicts. Or if you want to learn playing piano, you must do a lot of exercise, and you must ask a person which is more experienced than you in order who can teach you how to improve in playing the piano. So expertise is important in learning process.
Yeah.
But in the case of the absolute, of the meaning of life, there is no expert. There are no experts that can teach you. I often say that if you think that you have to reach being or awakening or through a path, is like a wave that tries to reach the ocean. And if someone says that I am awakened and you are not awakened, it's like a wave that says that it is wetter than other waves.
Right.
So this is just
Yeah.
to say that I'm not a teacher.
It's an important point because it's something that's come up before on this podcast. We have very basic titles for people. We say author, teacher, speaker.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a shorthand. But no, there's a lot of important wisdom in what you were just saying, and I love the framing of it as the resonance of being, because I think the role of a teacher or a facilitator or almost is like resonance. When we think about resonance, like sometimes you just have to point out to someone the details of a piece of music. Like it can be a piece of music that they really love. And I love these YouTube videos and podcasts where people dissect a song, and they'll like take, like a famous song, and they'll, point out this is the melody and this is the violin part and this is this part. And you start to hear all these strands that come together into what we love in music. And this, I guess we just don't really have a name for it, for what you do and what other teachers at SAN do. And I use that word again, teacher, but it's almost, I don't know what to call it.
Yes. And so, and if I think of the story of Mauro, my story, for example, when I was a child, and we used to go to the church on Sundays and all these things, religion didn't arise in me any sense of the sacredness. While yet, when I was looking at the starry sky, maybe in summer nights,
starry sky,
the starry sky, there I felt a sense of mystery about the vastness of that, all of that. And it was something very, very deep in me when I was a child. Or even when there were storms, strong storms with lightning and thunder, and there was a power, and now I have the words to describe what I felt. When I was a child, I couldn't, of course. But now I can say that when I was, for example, looking at the vastness of the starry sky, sometimes I felt a vastness also, I cannot say in myself, I could say behind myself. And sometimes the borderline between the two vastnesses just disappeared. And so, that is that gives you not only a sense of beauty, also something maybe uh, um, a sense of falling into a bottomless abyss. So also something similar to fear, but not fear. It's just a sense of a vastness that is overwhelming about your small ego. So the mystery of all of it was very present in me. When I was a child, I thought that I would become a scientist, maybe an astronomer that just is looking in the sky, or a physicist that is inquiring into the infinity of the smallest things, But behind this, there was not a simple scientific curiosity. There was the being fascinated by the mystery of this vastness. So and then when I was a student, and then I was interested in Oriental philosophies. I taught at a university for 35 years. Now I'm retired, but I have been teaching for 35 years Indian religions and philosophies. And I have practiced for many years different kind of meditation practices. The main one was Vipassana, but I had some practices in Soto Zen, in Vedanta, and in Taoism. So there were many different, but I always was free from any dogmatic or I didn't feel myself, for example, a Buddhist or I just experienced all these practices as tools to explore myself, what is reality and what I am, and all the rest. So without when you use a microscope, you don't need to be an to belong to the factory that built it, So, and so I always felt free from that. But I always had a special feeling with Krishnamurti's communication, and also Nisargadatta, that I had the privilege to meet just for a few days, but they were very, very influential in all the system called Mauro, and 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 also other authors that I later on read and appreciated, like Tony Parsons, or yeah, and other. exponents of other people that speak about non-duality. Rupert Spira, we know personally, and so. But what happened before that? It was that sometime in my life I could feel an ease, a happiness that I was surprised about this because it was already there uh, when I realized that it was there. But I was very surprised. I said, "Oh, why am I so happy now?" My life was like many other lives. I had, it was very important, for example, the 2 years when I was close to my mother, during her last 2 years, because she was had cancer, and in that, in there, I something in me. It is not a will, a matter of willing. It happened that I something decided to stay close to her and to go with her through this process. And so, even if it was very painful, of course, and but it was also, there was also something very some beauty in all of that that was recognized both by me and by my mother. And so, in that case, I could realize that I was really one with the situation, without any remainder that still was outside it. Because even when one is practicing meditation, for example, and you know that meditation is not an escape from reality, because, for example, if you use awareness, a practice of attention to the everyday life, it gives you more contact with reality. So it is not an escape from reality practicing meditation. But if a meditator is really sincere with himself, maybe that he realizes that somewhere inside there is a voice that says, if I practice meditation, I can be safe from all the pains of life. So there is something that doesn't want to be one with the life, because you want to be one only with the beautiful side of life, the beautiful half, but the other half you try to put outside of yourself in any way. And meditation also is this. Even if you really see what, for example, Lao Tse or Buddha or Christ say, they never promised that if you follow their way, you will be totally free from pain. Not even the Buddha, who said, yes, freedom of pain, but if you read well, you are not safe from the ups and downs of life, of course.
Yeah, it's the first noble truth. The first thing Buddha puts forth is that life
So,
is suffering.
to be one with a situation like, for example, in my case, the 2 years that I spent with my mother, to be one, it means that there is only life. Your ego has no importance there. That is because your ego is the one who says that I am here and life is in front of me. How can you be outside life? Of course, it's just a construction of mind. But we mainly live thinking, here I am, and there is life, and so I have to come to terms with life. Maybe I must fly off of it, or maybe I must make a conflict with it, or maybe I must surrender to it, or maybe I must accept it. But all these are strategies that are rooted on the false idea that here am I, and in front of me there is life, while I am fully in life. And so to be one with something that is, for example, it is painful. Huh? To be one is something that shows you that there is a peace down there, a peace that is always there. And so this was, for example, a very important, mm, a very important event in my life that maybe was opening up a window on what is beyond ego, like the conversations with Nisargadatta or like other moments in my life. So I realized that there was this happiness, and my mind, of course, was commenting, "Oh yes, you are happy now because your life is not so bad now. Economically, you can survive easily. You have not some illness, some disease, but if you wait, sooner or later, this happiness will go because some difficulties in life will come." And the answer of this was, "Oh yes, you are right." But after sometimes, again the same question. But why am I so happy now? Where does this happiness come from? And the mind, oh yes, because now all is smoothie, but wait, and I say, yes, you are right. And then I could realize that it was not so, that it was just an idea of the mind, in the sense that what I call happiness is different from pleasure. Pleasure is connected with a cause, with some input that gives you pleasure, maybe a good music, maybe making love, maybe, and so since there is an input, specific input, you can have more or less pleasure, and depending also on your whole situation of body and mind. Sometimes we can feel more pleasure because body and mind are well. Or happiness is not like that, because everyone can see that when in our life sometimes we say, now I am happy. The background in the background, the thought is, now I need nothing else. Now it's all good as it is now. I don't want anything more. I don't need anything more. Just this is complete. So happiness for me is the fragrance of completeness, of feeling complete. And this completed, if we just see, and here we arrive to non-duality, if you just see that everything has no separation, there are no separations. Science tells us in every way that you can't separate anything from this web of connections of the whole. So there are no real individuals. There are no real, because the body is the air, is the water it drinks, is the food that eats. And if it is the water, it is there is no separation from the cloud, there is no separation from the sea, from the sun that evaporates the water, and so on. So everything is just different names that we give to one process. There is the sun, there is the water of the water of the sea that becomes a cloud. Then this process becomes water, becomes rain, and we call rain. Then we drink the water and becomes us, and so on. So just physically, this is like that, and also mind and body are two faces of the same coin. So if there is no separation at all, we are the whole. When we ask, who am I? The only answer would be, I am the whole. So if we don't feel that, it is because we are convinced to be a separate ego, the one who is in front of life. And of course, if we think to be only this body-mind, and if we think that our awareness is only inside body and mind, while it happens just the opposite, that body, thoughts, and the physical sensations, and also sounds, all is appearing in awareness, of course. So, but we think that awareness is inside. And so we are limited to this body-mind. Of course, we feel incomplete, lacking of all, of everything. And so we are unhappy. But in life, from time to time, what happens is that just we don't know why. We're not doing something special. Just maybe we were sitting on the shore of the sea or whatever, and we feel that nothing is missing. And this completeness is happiness. And this is a ease that is not mine or yours, or it is what we are. Of course, during life there will be ups and downs. There will be pleasure and pain, and so on. You are not free from that. But that happiness is different. It doesn't go when your life becomes a little bit more problematic, full of problems.
So this it's all beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that journey and tying it into happiness, because I think this is a very important point in this distinction between what you call pleasure and happiness. And I'm wondering if often we use the term unconditional happiness or contentment, and I think I know I was surprised in my own journey through meditation that once the mind became still, once the body became still, in some ways I was a little scared at what I would find. What would be there once my thoughts stopped? What would be there once the story and the ego settled down? You know, what would I experience? And the fact that underneath of it all is this radiant, content joy that needs nothing is pretty remarkable, I think. And it's the fact that it's accessible from everyone. It's not, you know, some people do have that instant awakening experience where it's like a lightning bolt and they just get it right away. But for, I would say, most people, it's a process. You know, you have to slowly let go and, you know, practice meditation. In your work with people in these satsangs that you conduct, how do you guide people into that space, into discovering that unconditional radiant happiness that's behind it all?
Just before answering, just a little comment about what you were saying. I realized the presence of the happiness, of this happiness, after a long time, that it was there already, but mind was pretending that there wasn't any happiness. So something had already happened in my life also. I mean, the nature of this background of reality can be described in many ways. For example, in Vedanta, they say is awareness and being, awareness and happiness. No, but in my life, it was already there before my mind became convinced that before that my mind stopped to object something about it. So I can't say when it happened. And there was not a dramatic episode in my life that before there was, I didn't experience it, and after that fact, I sometimes it happens like that. I remember that Suzuki Roshi, the famous Zen teacher, was saying sometimes it's like if someone throws a lot of water against you, the moment before you were totally dry, the moment after you are totally wet, and you know exactly when it happened. When people experience this, they call it awakening, and maybe since it's a dramatic experience, they can write a book about that. But there is another way that I suppose that is more frequent. Is the man the person who enters into a fog, and after half an hour he is totally wet like the other one, but he can't say exactly when it happened. And in my case, it was like that because the mind didn't realize it for a long time, and it was like I so it was. You remember those Japanese soldiers that were still fighting the Second World War after many years that it had finished. My mind was like that. So, what appeared very clearly to me when I realized this is that happiness was somehow connected with the end of seeking. some time, there was not a moment in my life, something in the deep that was connected with the Mauro who was open up to the mystery of the vastness. And so there was a seeking to reach it. This seeking was no more there, had disappeared. It was the same thing, say, that there was no seeking and that there was this kind of fullness, completeness that I called happiness. So, and what was clear was that the seeking didn't end because I have found something, but just stopped. And when it stopped, completeness became apparent. So, so, so I could realize that there were no causes about that happiness. For example, in Buddhism, they often say that liberation is called the unconditioned, asamskrta in Sanskrit. Unconditioned, it means that it isn't dependent of any causes and conditions. So everything that one does in order to reach what is already here is a way to conceal, hidden, to hide the fact that it is already here. If I seek, that means that I lack something. But the problem is not that I lack something and that I have to reach in the future. The problem is that this lacking is this missing, this lacking is just built up by the mind because all is already complete. So there are no causes or conditions, no meditations, no moral behaviors, nothing that can cause what is already here, what is our real nature. So it became apparent to me that all what I have done before in my life, just it was interesting, of course, but had no connection at all with the fact that completeness became apparent. So just because sometimes we are too busy to find happiness, to understand that it is already here, to see that it is already here, is so
Yeah, and I think when you phrase it like that and you tell people, the secret to finding
yes,
happiness is to stop looking for it.
of,
That I think people can, but I think when people hear that, they can get a little frustrated because they're like, "What do you mean? It's here already? I still don't see it. Where is it?" You say it's here. It's the presence of this moment. Where? We're so I think habituated to think of solutions as external, to say that I need to get
the
that and
problem
bring
is
that in
that
here.
it is the separate ego that we think that we are that wants to reach this infinity. Is the finite. We live ourselves as a finite ego that feels incomplete because it is finite, limited. And so, in order to reach completeness, wants to reach the infinite. This is the situation. And so always the question is what can I do in order to reach the infinite? But the question comes from an illusion that there can be a finite thing outside the infinite or the whole. But if the infinite is really infinite, the finite must be included already in it. It can't be outside the infinite, you know. Otherwise, it would be the nearly infinite because it's not yet because it's lacking of the finite one, and the finite one is the one very unfortunate person, the only one who is excluded by the whole. You know, it's very funny because we and so when the ego, the finite ego or the separate ego hears that no action at all can cause the unconditioned, becomes frustrated, either become frustrated or says, okay, I will stop doing anything. But also that stopping comes from the idea that I am a finite entity that is able to choose what to do or what not to do, and is able to do actions in order to reach. And so is a double bind situation, as you say. And the only way to go out of the double bind situation is to see the unreality of all the premises of that situation.
So I'd like to return to something you spoke about in the beginning, which is this idea of vastness. And you talked about the vastness that you experienced looking out into the stars. And I think you said the vastness that you felt that was behind you, right? As opposed to inside of you. And also you were talking about the 2 years that you cared for your mother as she was dying or present with her, which is very resonant for me right now as I'm going through that with my own mother, as I was saying before we started recording. So yeah, what is it in this? What is it that for you, having gone through this path, that is it that we are witnessing when we're with people who are dying, for example, that we're somehow closer touching into that vastness? And the vastness is scary, right? For the egoic mind, like to be present, to stand and to see how actually large the known universe is frightening, you know, to think we're floating through that.
It's really overwhelming. So I can say something about my meeting with the Nisargadatta. I already spoke about that. So, but maybe here repeating this could be interesting. When I met Nisargadatta, I already had spent many years in practicing meditation, mainly Vipassana and Zen. So I had some confidence with awareness and developing of stillness and observing things. When I was there, Nisargadatta was standing in front of me and asked me, I was silent, he asked me, because I was a new one, said, what do you do? What practice do you do? What kind of approach? And I tried to synthesize it saying, I look at things and let them go, let them pass. And he asked, when all things have been let go, what remains? And he was insisting in those days with all of the people there, please speak about your experience, not intellectually, not abstractly. So, so I had the answer to that question because do, I, I had been practicing meditation for many years. So I said, yes, when everything is let go, what remains is awareness. That is the field of awareness that I already had, for example, the experience that maybe you can have a physical pain to the knees usually when you do some retreats, and that awareness is a sensitive space that is the pain inside this space, and so awareness has a, a vastness in comparison with all the experiences that are appearing and disappearing. So I at that time I believed that was my true identity, not thoughts, not physical sensation, not body mind, but awareness as a wider container. So I said, when everything is let go, what remains is awareness. And then he asked a question that I could never heard before in myself. So he asked, and when you let go even awareness, what remains? And in that moment, since it was the situation, the resonance was there. Maybe in the eyes of the Nisargadatta, they were full of fire, of passion for truth. So I felt thrown back and falling in a bottomless abyss. And my ego, that I felt was my identity, was trying to grasp the surface of this. And so, in the following two couple of days, or even when I wasn't there, from time to time, I felt falling back into this abyss. Maybe having a tea, being in a taxi. All of a sudden, I felt this uh, falling back in the abyss, and immediately, for fear of this vastness, bottomless vastness, that just the ego was rescuing the surface. And so, what happened then? The last day I was there, Nisargadatta told me some very strong words that I understood only with my mind, but not with the body and the heart. He said, "Don't lose yourself in the many branches of the many questions, but go straight to the root of the one question, or the one thing." And he says, "Go to the source. I throw you there," and he added, "I bury you there and stay there in the source until the seeker disappears. Then you will find beyond." The problem that I experienced was that at that time my mind had already interpreted all what had happened, and this interpretation was a barrier to understand the really direct truth of the words. What was this interpretation? My mind, with the experience that I had of falling back in the abyss, was saying more or less this. The liberation is falling to the bottom of the abyss. That is really liberation. But since your ego is still stronger, it hinders this falling because it goes to the surface. And so you have to work more and more in order to melt down this strongness of your ego. And so for about 10 or 15 years, I went on doing meditation. And it was totally useless because what I forgot really of the communication by Nisargadatta was until the seeker dies. So the seeker survived and for many years went on doing meditation. That is a wonderful tool to stay better in life, to open up the mind, to harmonize body and mind and relationships. I'm not speaking against meditation, which is a precious tool, but I was doing it in order to reach the free fall into the abyss. And so I didn't realize the core of non-duality. That is, that for the absolute is totally, irrelevant. Is there an English word to say? Is totally irrelevant whether there is the illusion of a separate ego, or if there isn't, because both are an expression of the absolute. So when there is the ego, is the absolute manifesting as ego. When there is no ego, is the absolute manifesting as egolessness. That is always the absolute. If this is not only an idea, but becomes an evidence, it becomes if there is the illusion of a separate ego, it's okay. I mean, if a mirage, you can see in a mirage water down there. So you can't say that the mirage doesn't exist, is inexistent. The mirage, there is the mirage. Otherwise, nothing would appear. If something appears, it means that there is something. The only thing that there isn't is real water down there. So if a mirage appears and you know that there is no water, who minds about that? And so it happened many years after that this became clear.
And is that still accessible for you now? Like this feeling of the bottomless pit of what's behind awareness, this falling into emptiness?
I think it's unavoidable. It's impossible to go.
But I mean, the felt, and is the felt sense of it is present, and is it disorienting, or does it feel familiar now to you?
Now, it's interesting this question because I could answer yes, or I could answer no. So we must mm, understand that the fact that we are using words, and words are not what they point to. Uh, Maybe in spiritual traditions, and especially in non-dual traditions, it is often said that you can't know the absolute, but the absolute is always here. What does it mean? It means that knowing is a cognitive activity that passes through thought, and that means through words. And you cannot express what is infinite with words, because every word is a definite thing. Definite, it means that every word is like a frame that is around something that is what is, I say apple, an apple is a frame around something red with a taste. I call that apple. And of course, the usefulness of words is that they can only point to one form that is different from any other. So, so forms are limited and can be thought, can be named by our knowledge tools, tools of knowledge, because they are limited. Absolute is, of course, is a name. Infinity is a name. But of course, absolute and infinity has no form, because it appears as any form. Shankara, the famous Indian non-dualist philosopher, was saying that Brahman, that is the term he uses for the absolute, is beyond any perception, any knowledge. Sometimes in spiritual circles, you often find someone who says, but you speak about the absolute, but this is only an intellectual way of. But if you don't have an experience of it, if you don't experience it, of course, it's only intellectual stuff. I agree about the intellectual stuff. I disagree on the fact that you can have experience of the absolute. Because even experience that is based on perception is limited to a form. I can have experience of a sound, and if the sound is high, it cannot be low. If a color is red, it cannot be green. So every experience is limited to a form, defined form. So you can't have experience of the absolute. So if you can't know the absolute with your thought, if you can't have an experience of the absolute, maybe this absolute isn't there. This is the great doubt. No? But we know that the all is. There is something. This is you can't avoid that. If the first fundamental question is there nothing at all, or is there something? The answer is there is something. Then we can't know exactly what this something is, but that there is something is sure. So when Shankara was saying that you can't know, you can't perceive the Brahman, the Absolute, and nevertheless, every single experience, limited experience, in your life is nothing other than an expression of Brahman. So you can't help perceiving Brahman in everything. So this is a premise that I did about your question, because of course that from the point of view of perceiving the absence of a separatedness or feeling the silence that encompass everything. This in some moments is present as an experience, but if I busy with discussing about paying my taxes with someone, of course all my thought and all my is involved in that speaking, and so there is not the experience of the silence. And this is another thing that is must be quite clear. There is this is why I am very not critical, but very no, perplexed about people speaking about awakening, their awakening, because many of them misunderstand an experience for the absolute. You can have an experience and you can call it awakening. But Ramana Maharshi often said that every new experience, any new experience, new meaning that an experience that you before had never had before, and then you have this new experience. So any new experience that comes, since it came, sooner or later will end, will go away. All everything that you, every experience, the peacefulness, the openness, the infinity, etc. If it is an experience, it will go away. You will lose, because all new things that come will go. So experience come and go. But there is something in experiences that is always the same. It is not any experience has two sides of the coin. They can't be divided, can't be separate, but are different. One side is the fact that it happens, the fact that it is. I see an apple. There is the being of the apple, the fact, the event that an apple exists, being. That is this side. What it is, how it is the the science that makes that experience unique as an apple and not as an umbrella. So the what is, the how is the meaning of experience, and it changes continuously. Is in time, the apple transforms and then passes away. The fact that it is, when that experience of the apple fades away, and you have an experience of a flying butterfly instead of that is the being of it is just the same as the apple. It doesn't change. It doesn't. But it has no qualities, because the qualities are in what the what is, or how it is, and that is changing continually. But the being, the event, is unchanging. It is unknowable, because all our knowledge is about what is something. So this, I sometimes call it presence, as just the shared being of everything. Is a taste that is unavoidable for everyone. Everyone is feeling it. It's not an experience, as I say, but is unavoidable for everyone. Sometimes we notice it, sometimes we don't, but we can't go out of
It's
it.
the one thing that's undeniable, is this presence or existence. It's the
Yes,
only thing that we can
yes,
certainly say is happening, is that there is
yes. And something similar is what we call awareness, is for or consciousness.
Mhm.
If we mean by this word not the content,
Right,
the consciousness of an
right,
apple, but the pure awakeness
right.
that allows something to appear,
Yeah,
because outside the awareness nothing can appear. So awareness is the same thing, because is it can be aware of objects that appear inside it, but it cannot aware of itself in the objective sense. It would be like turning rapidly around oneself in order to see your shoulders. It's impossible, you know.
yeah. But it's still a practice people do,
So
is the awareness of awareness itself, and you start to investigate the qualities of what does awareness feel like, as a way to kind of get back behind, what you were talking about earlier, the answer you gave to Nisargadatta
this is
Maharaj.
a very yes, but this is a very tricky thing for words and mind, because I suspect that some the awareness of awareness could be a misunderstanding of an analytical work of thought. If I try to investigate the qualities of awareness, like now we are speaking about awareness, we are using thought, words. The word is never what it means. So, eh, but in the actual presence of awareness, awareness can experience only forms, of course. Not, but awareness itself is formless, so can't be perceived, can't be experienced, because it is the source of every. It is the experiencing itself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the eye. The eye can see everything just because it is invisible to himself.
Mm-hmm.
So everything you see is the certain gives you the absolute certainty that there must be an eye. If you see an apple, of course there must be an eye.
Right.
And so this is the evidence, but you can't see your eye. But awareness, also, I could say, just in a different way, is a self shining. So light doesn't need to be seen because another light illuminates it. You know, it's self shining.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because I was going to mention a metaphor when you were talking about our inability to directly know the absolute, and that metaphor would be the sun. So right now, the sun's shining through your window, it's shining through my window. So we know the sun in a certain way. We can see it illuminating our spaces, even though we're on different sides of the planet. And there's amazing things that one can do when you know the sun. So you can grow tomato plants with the sun. You can create electricity from the sun. But there's still this quality of the sun that we could never know because we can't travel to the sun. If we were to actually know the sun, we would die. Our bodies would burn up. A spaceship would burn up if it got close enough. And yet, the essence of the sun is still these photons that, that's basically what we're experiencing, are these photons that were transmitted and came through space to our planet, and we're seeing them now come illuminate the space and make plants grow, and we turn it into energy biologically and electronically. So this metaphor of never being the inability to know at its root what this, whatever the word we use, the source, what the absolute, the void that we were talking about earlier, but to know rays of it. And actually, that's funny because that's the title of the film that Maurizio made, Rays of the Absolute. This film. That was the beginning of Science and Nonduality, was Maurizio and Zaya working on this film about Nisargadatta Maharaj. So, yeah.
Now, Nisargadatta used to say that you can't see daylight. You can see a flower, a red flower, a green leaf, but not the daylight. And in fact, light, when it travels space, is totally invisible. We can see we can see light only when it meets a reflective surface. But when it meets it, we see light only with the shape, the size, and the form and the color obtained with the encounter with the object. And so we can see only, so to speak, we can have experience only of contents of awareness, but not experience awareness itself, because awareness is the experiencing itself, or the source of experiencing.
Yeah, but my question earlier. But there are qualities of awareness, though, and don't you think becoming more familiar and in meditation or in daily life, we were talking about happiness in the beginning of our conversation. So there's a quality of awareness that's content, that's curious and content and joyful. And don't you think, it's a tricky domain, because I guess we're still talking about the contents of awareness when we talk about its qualities. But don't you think becoming more intimate with these qualities of awareness is how we learn to let go and get closer to the absolute?
Yes. For example, when we feel that we exist, the feeling that I am, that's connected also with awareness, of course. Being in awareness together, if we ask, am I sure that now I exist, or am I sure that now I am aware? The answer is yes. But the question and the answer are thoughts. But before the yes come, in that pause, this Rupert Spira often speaks about that. In that pause, when we maybe try to verify if we really exist, some evidence of being comes up, which is doesn't need to be looked for, because it is before any thought. We should we ponder about it, or it just comes up as an evidence, of course. So this is something connected with being, with awareness. It is what Nisargadatta calls the I am, and it is the precondition for any other experience to happen. Because if, first of all, I am not here and aware, nothing appears. But even this is not pure awareness. Even this comes and goes, because every night when we go and sleep, after the dreaming period, we fall in the sleepless, in the dreamless sleep. And there, everything disappears. So even the sense of being and being aware, even the I am, comes and goes. So the question is, what acknowledges that this being and being aware had disappeared and then has come again? There must be something more basic, more that perceives this coming and going of the I am, and this is what is behind the ground of all. I remember a wonderful metaphor by Nisargadatta. He says, at the raising of the sun in the morning, the early morning, uh, every single drop of, how do you call it? The drops of water on the flowers.
Dew, like DEW.
Dew is.
Yes.
So he says, when in the early morning the sun rises, every single dew drop becomes begins to shine, and you could see a drop, a spot of life inside each of them. So the light of the sun is just one, indivisible, but in contact with the drops, it seems that in each drop there is light. That spot of light is what we experience in our life as the I am, the undeniable certainty that I exist. But even that is just an expression of one light that is invisible. So that drop allows us to experience all the many experiences in our life. Because before experiencing, there must be me. I must be here and awake and existing. But even that sense of being and being aware comes and goes, because it's just an expression of the unknowable vastness that is that invisible light. So, in this sense, awareness is not is has no is so non-dual that it has no need to split into a subject perceiving an object. You know, we don't need to know what ourselves, because we are ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a subtle place to try to inhabit, that space of, like you were talking about, this awareness that occurs in dreamless sleep, this dreamless sleep state, because as soon as we say, what is this? We've come out of the dreamless sleep state. We've awoken to a higher level of, wanting to identify, what is this? What is this? What is this? Yeah. Yeah, well, I want to be mindful of your time today. I could probably spend hours and hours talking about this because I'm endlessly fascinated with, it's such an honor to speak with you today, with someone with your vast life experience and practice with it. So I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak today and to go deeper and to ask, what is this? Even though in many ways the answer is to let go of even asking the question.
No, it is. It was also. It has been a joy for me to share the resonance of being in this in such a distance. I'm in Italy, you are in the States, but the resonance of being is limitless. So.
And thank you for listening to The Sounds of Sand. We invite you to explore more of our talks, dialogues, videos, articles, events, and offerings through our website, scienceandnonduality.com. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please consider becoming a member to access our massive library of Sand content, available exclusively to Sand members. And we would love it if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify. And share this episode with your family, friends, and all sentient beings.